All right, we're going to continue with our theme of fear. I kind of did a little bit of a setup on Islamophobia. If you actually look at your programs, it's actually a topic for discussion today. We're going to do a video. We're going to have a little bit of information read, but it is going to be an open discussion that we'd like to have with the fellowship.
Wow, how's that for a scary Halloween story? Here we have Reverend Terry Jones blaming all Muslims for the acts of a radical group of Muslims and threatening to burn Qurans in protest. On the other hand, we have Muslims worldwide blaming all Americans for the acts of a minister of a very small Christian church in Florida and threatening to kill Americans worldwide. This raises the question, is it okay to openly disrespect the sacred objects of Islam? No matter how silly we think the idea of magic religious relics is, not just in Islam, but in any language, in any religion. Is it reasonable to fear the worldwide rapid spread of Islam, its cultural ideas, its attitude toward other religions, its attitude toward women? That is it reasonable to at least occasionally be Islamophobic? You know, after all, every one of the 9/11 hijackers was Muslim. And as they died, they uttered the Muslim phrase, Allah Akbar, God is the greatest. They were clearly acting in the name of Islam, no matter how many other Muslims might argue that a true Muslim would never act like that. The shoe bomber acted in the name of Islam. The Fort Hood shooter, the underwear bomber, the attempted Times Square bomber, all acted in the name of Islam. About 2 years ago in Mumbai, India, that's a suburb of Bombay, about a dozen locations were simultaneously attacked. You probably remember the pictures of the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel burning. 101 people died. 287 more were injured, all in the name of Islam. The bombing of the Navy ship Cole was in the name of Islam. Islamic Sharia law is already the law of the land on the east from Afghanistan and Pakistan through Iraq and Saudi Arabia and all along the northern border of Africa. As Islamic influence grows in countries like France and the UK, there is increasing support for Sharia law in certain political subdivisions to settle civil, not criminal, civil disputes in things like divorce settlements and disagreements between businesses. But it's important to note that while all the radicals I mentioned were Muslims, it is not true that all Muslims are radicals. Most Muslims just want to live and let live and to raise their families in peace and prosperity, like everybody else. In fact, many Muslim women in the United States don't even cover their heads out in public. They do leave their houses without a male chaperone. They do drive. Any of those things would get a woman arrested or at least clubbed by the religious police in Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia. So if we say that most Muslims are moderates, are we failing to understand that some of them are not moderate? Suppose, for example, you're an abortion provider. Would it be foolish of you to ignore the fact that some Christians are not moderate? and they just want you dead? That kind of reminds me of a scene from Goldfinger where James Bond is strapped to the table and an industrial laser is rapidly approaching his midsection. Bond says, okay, what is it you want me to do? Goldfinger looks at Bond and he coldly says, Mr. Bond, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to die. In my view, we in the U.S. have powerful enemies who regard us as infidels and devils. And they just want us to die. But I think it's important for us to identify our enemies without casting the net so wide that we also include our friends. I'd like to invite some discussion on that topic right now. If you'd like to comment, I ask you to raise your hand. Because our time is very limited, I'd like to keep the discussion narrowly focused on this single idea. Other countries feel free to burn the U.S. flag, to burn Christian Bibles, to burn our president in effigy, all without fear of retribution. So my question to you is this: is it okay for people in the United States to burn Korans, even if that inflames Islamic passions worldwide, even if it incites riots in which people die, and even if it harms our war effort? Is that okay? Yes, Jen?
I'm reminded of the huge movement on Facebook and other social networking websites of the Draw Muhammad Day this year, because there were threats of people being attacked because they were going to have everyone draw a picture of Muhammad, and there was a huge backlash of that. And I think that it's very important to note that we do kind of target these people of Islam as the extremists, and we characterize them by the most extreme, where we don't do the same with the Timothy McVeighs and the Christian right-wing wackadoodles. And we don't classify them as Christian terrorists, but we do have a tendency, and the media especially has a tendency to classify them as Islamic or Muslim terrorists. And I think it's in a huge part the fault of the media feeding us this Islamophobia, that this is okay because this is what we're using to classify these people. And I think that a lot of the fault lies in that the media coverage that is feeding this to the people.
I have another comment over here.
But did Timothy McVeigh ever do in the name of God?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, when it comes to burning the Quran, I think absolutely he should have, the legal right to do that, but it's obviously not a very wise thing to do, given the reality of what we're faced with, since we have men and women overseas in predominantly Muslim areas, where these people are largely uneducated. They're obviously very indoctrinated with the idea that this is a holy object, and that to burn it is the greatest insult, and it would result in violence against our men and women. This is obviously, he didn't end up doing it. I'm hoping that he thought better of it because of that.
So you're urging him not to be kind of like waving a flag, a red flag, and start in front of a bull, like you did?
Well, yeah, exactly. Now, I'm a little conflicted on some aspects of this because she brought up the Draw Muhammad Day, and even I participated in that because I really felt like they don't have the right. If their rule is don't draw Muhammad, it's part of their religion. Well, they can follow that all they want, but I don't see that they have the right to tell us, who are not Muslim, that we can't draw something that we're labeling Muhammad. On that aspect, I tend to agree with the idea that we should be allowed to do this. But especially in lieu of the fact that they did go out and kill people for doing just that, and threatened many other artists and writers.
Is there one over here? Yes.
I think what PZ totally doesn't get is that there's no logic involved in this. This is a religious feeling and a religious belief. And how many of you think that religion has anything to do with logic? You know, we as a country don't have any sacred cows. But that doesn't mean the rest of the world doesn't. You know, the freedom to, we say your freedom ends where your fist meets my nose kind of thing. Well, to religious fanatics, if you burn a religious symbol, you are hitting them in the nose, folks. So just because we don't have these sacred cows, the idea that we can get away with trying to destroy theirs is flying right in the face of reality.
So you would say we shouldn't do it then?
We should not.
Okay.
In light of what you just said, Islamophobia is a misnomer. It is not an irrational fear when there are people who freely admit and threaten to doing bodily harm unto death if you offend them. It doesn't have to be everybody. You don't have to be afraid of all Muslims. But because the religion is structured the way it is, because the Quran says what it does, there are people, fundamentalists, just like there are in the Christian religion, who take whatever is in their holy book as our gospel, and they are going to follow it.
We have one over here.
Does he have the right to do it? Absolutely. His reasons for doing it are because it's what Islam is of the devil, and it's grounded in his Christian faith. So I question, should we be supporting someone like that? He absolutely has the right to do it. And so, but what the other part of it is going off of is Islamophobia and irrational fear. Well, whenever the Danish cartoons were coming out in 2006, you had the Saudi government, the Iranian government, a lot of the Middle Eastern governments going to the Danish Prime Minister and saying, you cannot allow him to publish these cartoons. He said, well, I can't stop them. We have the freedom of speech. They don't, sometimes they don't understand that concept. And it's one of those things that we need to constantly challenge what it is, so that way it doesn't have that creeping incrementalism that's there.
So you'd say we shouldn't prohibit it, but we should encourage him not to do it because there's a lot of...
I don't think we should encourage him at all. I don't think the media coverage, he went from a congregation of 50 and he got worldwide coverage for it because the media wanted to feed on it. I think partly because it's an election year, so politicians wanted to have a nice little comment piece, same thing with the Ground Zero Mosque.
We got time for probably one more. Bill?
I think we need to understand the good side of this. This is a real gift to the secular community. Now, let me preface this by saying I love dogs. Some of my best friends are good dogs. But this is a dog fight. We don't have a dog in this fight. And there are two bad dogs fighting. What we need to relentlessly continue to point out is that these two dogs are the same dog. They're religious fanatics. Point it out, realize we're going to be conflicted about all the rights and wrongs of it, but this is not our fight, this is a gift to us. If we just point out, these are the same, this is the same dog on both sides. It's pretty ugly. It's not a good dog.
I encourage you to continue the discussion over lunch. We could probably go on for another hour here, but we're kind of out of time. So thank you.